actually cost when your leadership isn't ready for it?
It costs a lot of stress, a lot of money. It can cost a marriage. It can cost your health. I mean, it can cost everything. And we just kept seeing it time and time again. I mean, I hugely pivoted away from, business development and coaching with businesses because I didn't have the tools, frameworks, and mentorship ahead of time, or the experience of what a bad season or seasons look like in business. For me, it was always just up, 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 up.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to Life by the Horns. I've got Dustin Lundy here, the CEO of Best Life Group and co-creator of Limitless Leaders. I've also got our producer here in the background, Adrian, who's going to be along with us today as well. Today everyone says that they want to grow their business, but most people don't realize that growth exposes everything that your leadership has been hiding. Today, we're going to be talking about what happens when the problem isn't your marketing, your ads, or your team. It's you. So let's dive in. Dustin, how are you today, man?
I'm well, brother. How are you?
I'm good. What's up, Adrian? How about yourself, man? How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me here, guys. Good to cap into today's conversation.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, let me ask you the question, Dustin. We've been talking a lot about Best Life Group and just the journey here. But when you think back to the early BLG days, what kind of leader were you, and how much of that guy is still here today, or do you still recognize?
Right. No, I thought I was a good leader back in the day. I mean, I was doing everything everybody said to do, right?
Yeah.
Read the books, go to the masterminds, invest in oneself and all that. But the reality was I was super ego driven, probably very selfish in much capacity, and was really focused on leadership development to try to pull the best out of my people. And instead of focusing on me first and trying to really become the best version of myself.
Got you. You said trying to pull the best out of your people. What did that look like practically? What were you trying to do?
I was trying to make them do what I wanted them to do, which I thought was the best thing.
Yeah.
But naturally, although a lot followed suit, I was probably repulsive. I was chaotic. I was emotionally unstable, like everything that you wouldn't want from a leader.
So was there a specific moment when you realized, obviously we are a marketing business, but when did you realize that it wasn't a marketing business anymore? It was more a leadership business for you?
There was consistent volatility in every season, and I thought that I was great. And every time that we would have problems and whatnot arise, I would double down on that they were the problem, find somebody else that I thought was better. And then it wasn't really until our last season of attempted growth that I realized it didn't matter if I hired the best people in the world at what they did. If they were following suit to my leadership, and my leadership or me as a person needed to be worked on so much, I was never going to get the best out of people, create the culture that we were really looking for. And then when I started looking at just the data, the common denominator was me.
So you were the common denominator. I think there's got to be a story there. So give me an example of when you saw that kind of show up in your life or in your company.
Well, it wasn't just showing up in the company was the problem. So it was definitely showing up at home. It was showing up in relationships that I had, but more so it was also hugely showing up inside of the businesses that I had at that time. And both of them had radically different cultures. They were radically different businesses. And again, what it kept pointing back to was me. So I was going through lots of seasons of hiring and firing in one of them because it was very seasonal. Inside of BLG, not nearly the seasonality, but a completely different type of person that I was leading. In one hand, it was a very blue collar space that I had. And so we were, in large part hiring for people's brawn, not their brains. In BLG, it was creatives, and we're definitely hiring for brains and not brawn. And again, I was seeing both of the same things manifest themselves in both businesses. And it kept just pointing back to me. And for more specificity, like what did that look like? I hired one of the best sales guys in the world in the marketing space. He actually used to co-host this with me. And consistently, it didn't matter what our plan was, what our agenda was. I kept showing up to things going, hey, my problem is our sales guy or our head of growth. And consistently, what I kept getting back from other business leaders was, are you sure you have him in the right role? Are you giving him too much responsibility? Or are you looking for another unicorn? Mm-hmm. And as I kept kind of playing this song and dance over and over again, again, it just kept coming back to me that I was the problem. I was seeing friction. I was seeing opportunity for growth, and I was trying to force it onto people versus lean in more empathetically with people and show up as a better leader for them to make sure that they were bringing out the best in themselves.
If I can interject, sorry, guys, if I can slide in there. So World Economic Forum 2025 research says 86% of employees say they aren't heard fairly by their leaders. Do you think if you knew those stats back then, Dustin, it would have made a big difference of insight on how you manage?
No. And the reason I say that is because I wasn't ready to receive that information. I would have put myself in some bucket, which would have been hugely unfair, and said, no, I'm a great leader. The problem is them. Now, hearing that now, yeah, 1,000% yes, that I wasn't listening to the team. I was not, when they were bringing things to the table, when it came to opportunities inside of the business, my strategy, how I was leading, et cetera, I just wasn't there for it. I figured I was working so damn hard. It didn't matter nearly as much to them. I've just got to go. And they'll either follow suit or they'll go somewhere else. And they just kept consistently going somewhere else.
What do you think growth actually costs when your leadership isn't ready for it? Like, what is it?
It costs a lot of stress, a lot of money. It can cost a marriage. It can cost your health. I mean, it can cost everything. And we just kept seeing it time and time again. I mean, I hugely pivoted away from, business development and coaching with businesses because I didn't have the tools, frameworks, and mentorship ahead of time or the experience of what a bad season or seasons look like in business. For me, it was always just up. And so it wasn't until having to go through those myself where I realized that, man, like it really does all start here with you as the leader first. I mean, all this other shit that we buy into, which is some of the stuff we do, which is marketing automations, et cetera, like none of that really matters if the leader's not ready for it.
Yeah. So you end up thinking you need more leads and, but really you actually need more leadership. Why do you think so many business owners think they just need more growth and more leads?
Because it's the thing that's talked about the most. When you go into a forum and you say, hey, I'm looking to grow my business, what should I do? Majority of the questions and commentary that you get back is, well, you should invest in this or you should invest in that, whether it be marketing, paid ads, search engine optimization, a better website, a better team when it comes to sales and all these other things. But I mean, we've even seen this internally when people invest in us. What ends up happening is that growth exposes the leadership gaps inside of the business. It exposes operational gaps inside of the business. And it just makes all the pressure and stress that we already have as business owners amplify.
Yeah. No, and you've said before, you can't sustain what your leadership can't support. Talk about what that means in practice, though.
Oh man, I don't want to go woo-woo on anybody or anything, but I know from at least my own experience, I had tried everything that the books said, and it just wasn't working. And I could take something from $0 to $1 million within 24 months very easily. I was doing it time and time again, but it was beyond that $1 million mark where I kept running into friction. And what was happening was that basically my brain or my nervous system were very comfortable in that loop that I was in. But to then go beyond that, business was going to look very different. Hiring was going to look very different. The team was going to be substantially bigger. The systems that supported that were going to have to look very different. And I was going to have to get out of the way. Like one of the things that I used to value, but I do not value anymore was, hey, if you're the business owner or the CEO or whatever you want to call it, the buck stops at me. And I've got to have the most talent, the most skill and everything else. And everyone's here to support me. What I've learned is that the buck stopping at me or me being the one that, checks off on everything and has to be involved in every process, every sales call, everything actually ends up creating this massive bottleneck that I can't sustain. And I don't think many business owners can either. We don't grow our business because we want more work to do. Right. We grow it because we want to have more impact and then fulfillment and better relationships with our team, our family, and the people that we serve. And instead, a lot of us end up growing businesses and we do quite the opposite of that. It just creates more pressure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, just thinking about it, like we were talking about how back initially you didn't see that. Like when I first started with BLG, we were talking about it and I was talking about you going on vacation and things like that. You couldn't even see it. You're like, yeah, whatever. Like it sounds like a great idea, but no. How has that shifted from where you were last year and this year?
Yeah, I mean, so basically what happened is I burnt completely out, and I was burning down all the things that meant the most to me in my life. And so, yeah, like, did we have a multi-million-dollar business that, on the outside looked very successful? Sure. But the partnership was in shambles. The relationships were terrible inside of there. The culture was going to shit. And then when I looked at the other business that we had, BLG, in a lot of capacity, although there was a lot of good people and very talented and the culture was much better, we still ended up seeing a lot of churn externally and internally. And then I was wearing all this stress and all this pressure and discomfort when I was going home. And I was coping with it in very unhealthy ways. And I finally just got to a point in talking with a transformational coach or whatever you want to call them, this idea that less is more. And I was like, so what does that look like in practicality? Like when somebody works with you, what does success look like? And they were like, well, a lot of times they sell a business. They end up doing something with nonprofit or community outreach. They end up finding a hobby. And then as I listened to all this, my immediate reaction, like viscerally, I was like, that sounds horrible. That's not what we've been taught. And then fast forward, once I've started kind of going through this process, I'm like, oh yeah, now I get it.
Yeah. That's like your idea of best life totally shifted.
My idea of best life was significantly higher revenue numbers, doing more, and thinking that if I had more money, my family would be happier. And that if I had more money, I could go get a cooler car and a bigger house and all this other stuff. But at the end of the day, I really didn't care. Yeah. That wasn't where any fulfillment ever came for me.
100%. How has that shift changed how you interact with even customers or clients on the front end?
Because it doesn't feel forced anymore. When you're in this season of pressure in business where you have to get the sale, where you have to grow the thing, it almost turns into like this sleazy conversation where like you're trying to convince them that this is the thing that they need, even in trying to recruit team members and whatnot, trying to convince somebody and manipulate, their decision-making process. But for me, at least at this point, when you become deeply rooted in who you are as a business and as a person and what actually fulfills you and the impact that we actually create for business owners that we work with, it's no longer a sales conversation.
Right.
It really is just an educational moment and where we get to make a decision. And if they don't want to work with us, going through all this objection training and everything else, although sure it works to some capacity, for me, it's, either I didn't educate them well enough or they can't afford it. And, one of those things I can fix, the other one, not so much. So it's completely changed how that conversation takes place.
That's super cool. And then internally, I want to shift gears and talk a little bit about the team, but Gallup reports show that only 1 in 3 employees are actively engaged at work. First part of this question is, whose fault is that? and the second part is, how have you seen that? How have you seen that change here since you started?
It's always the leader.
Mm-hmm.
It's always their fault. They didn't do a good enough job on the front end of really leaning into their values and what they were looking for, and then making sure they hold people accountable to that through the process. I think a lot of times that we've even seen this still, but it's okay because it's working out the way we want. Having great culture and great leadership also means that sometimes you'll have a bad hire. It also means that very quickly that is exposed once you get through that honeymoon phase. And a lot of times you'll see the new team member opt themselves out versus just stick around. I mean, even some of the stuff that we do on a daily, when everyone is reporting to, their week and volume and workload and stuff that has or has not gotten done. And a lot of our team is international. And so they're remote. We don't see them. But I could only imagine the amount of pressure I would feel if I was full-time and was trying to half-ass, get my work done in a 20-hour week, and everybody else on the team is reporting that they're getting all their stuff done. You have nothing to hide behind. And so very quickly, and we had this a month ago, somebody said, hey, I have a million different questions and I read this and I was thinking about doing that. Can I just do this whenever I want? And we were like, well, you're not even getting the work done right now and you're at 50% capacity with a full-time schedule. Mm-hmm. So very quickly, the team and everybody identified this isn't a good fit, and that's okay because that's ideally what you want. But it's always the leader.
So, gentlemen, if I may, Dustin, we've got some contributions from some of our viewers here, and in your infinite wisdom, you have become more experienced, more seasoned through trial and error, it seems. So we've got a few options, and this is manager edition, this or that, of what makes the cut as you, the leader, the boss. So I'm going to give you two options here that have been submitted, and you say which one best fits your cohesive work ethic. Sound good?
Yeah.
All right. This is this or that manager edition, straight from our viewers. Okay. First off, at the office, business smart or casual comfy? What are they wearing?
Oh, casual comfy.
Oh yeah, casual comfy all day.
Says the man with hoops in his ears. All right, excellent.
I'm wearing jeans today, though, and that's a first in a long time with dress shoes. So,
Lord help us, the end of days. All right, after work drinks or pizza party on a Friday?
pizza party on a Friday.
Yeah, pizza party on a Friday all day.
Emergency team meetings or an email that sends to all?
Email.
Yeah, email. It interrupts their day too much to have the emergency meetings.
Carrot or stick?
Carrot.
And then finally, the ultimate manager question. Raheem Morris leads the Falcons to the Super Bowl, or Walt Weiss leads the Braves to the World Series?
Walt Wise.
Falcons. At least wishful thinking.
Yeah. No, the reality is there's too much to change on the Falcons right now.
Right.
Now that we're done with those hypotheticals, I'll be waiting for my pizza. Thank you, sir.
It's coming,
It
man.
may be cold by the time I get it there, but we can try.
Gotcha. I gotcha.
Oh man. So let me ask you this, Dustin. How does, we talk a lot about ego, and we've gone through a lot of ego, done a lot of ego work here over the last year. How does ego tend to show up in leadership, and how have you had to face your own version of it?
Yeah, I mean, for me and what I've seen with a lot of others is it's either my way or the highway. Nobody has an ability to basically listen and change their perspective when they're hugely ego driven, because it's too deeply rooted in the emotion of being right. Versus, having the ability to just take a minute and listen and think if this other solution is a possibility. And the downside to ego, and again, I've lived through this, is when you sit in those moments where you're like, hey, team, let's all gather and get together, and I want to give all of you an opportunity to let me know what you think. And in every instance you do that, and it doesn't matter what they think, they see that. And one of the things that I saw in my own leadership was we would do these weekly leadership meetings, and we'd all sit down and we'd learn this great message, and we talked about extreme ownership and everything else. And then they would say, yeah, and we'd love to try this. And I'd be like, no, that doesn't work. And here's why. Versus giving somebody, as long as it's in this like safety container and no one's going to get hurt and it's not an ethical violation, giving them the ability to fail or ask questions for them to potentially see another perspective and then lean into that so that there's actual ownership of what they're about to do versus what I did all the time, which was shut it all down.
Oh man. So your team actually told you that.
Yes.
Talk me through what that moment felt like, man.
I really respect this gentleman for it, because I'll never forget, we were in one of these meetings and I don't know what the context was, but I said something and I saw this like physical reaction from him. And I said, hey, we're not going anywhere until we talk through this. What is it that you don't agree about? And he was like, this is not the time or the place for me to have this response because it will probably cost me my job. And I said, okay. And me being me, a Taurus who is type A, said, well, we're going to figure this shit out right now. And outside of the meeting, I sat down with him. I could tell like he was very upset. And he was just like, look, Dustin, it doesn't matter what we tell you. It is always ultimately your decision. And 99% of the time, our opinion doesn't matter. So why are we even having these meetings versus you just send us an email that says this is what you want us to do so we can quit wasting everyone's time? And in that moment, was I frustrated? Absolutely. But as I got a little bit wiser, I went, damn, I wish more people would have done that a long time ago. And we probably could have been a lot further along at this point.
So was that immediately like you changed right after that, or
No.
was it okay? So it took you a while to really...
Way too long. Yeah.
Got you. So that brings me to my next question. Why do leaders demand accountability from their teams, but avoid it themselves?
It's an easier thing to do than to tell people this is what I want versus show up like that ourselves. And far too often, we see, and I worked with so many business owners back in the day where I heard this, I want our team to show up on time, and they're not showing up on time. Well, what does that look like in your leadership? I'm like, what do you mean? What time are they supposed to be there? Oh, 6, 7 a.m. Great. What time do you get there? 9:30. Well, no shit. No shit, they're not listening. So either that value doesn't matter, or if it does matter, you have to act it out in your own leadership.
And that's key, man. It's like a lot of people expect everyone else to kind of bend the knee, but they're not willing to do it themselves. And you also talk about this idea of leading from the front versus leading from the back, and how that affects the team. What do you feel like maybe is the difference between a team that complies versus a team that really commits to the mission and the overall goal?
Right. So compliance generally happens with either really great team members, that you enrolled, or fear. And I've seen both. When it's fear-based leadership and you're very totalitarian or whatever you want to call it, people are afraid at the end of the day, if I don't do what I'm supposed to do, then I'm going to get fired. And there are people that unfortunately you can take advantage of and do that too. And when done in the masses, it just creates, well, this is our culture. We work really hard. We always do what, the director says or whomever, or you won't be here. That'll last for a period of time, but you will also burn people out. You also will not attract very great talent if you lead with that. Now, when you talk to full commitment, that's where you have to go back to being deeply rooted in core values for who you are as a person and the organization, and you have to live those through. And then you have to have conversations on the front end about what that means and what that looks like. And that the reality is, if we don't do those things, then we can't be here, and that's okay. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means that you're not a good fit here. And we have seen it like time and time again. I've seen it in you and so many other team members where it's like, hey, this is the box of when we work. But also, like, if we know that we need to get this done, like, we're just going to do it and get it done. No one asks for any of that. It just happens.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, and it becomes very easy to see when, again, like you said, when somebody falls outside of that. It's, it kind of goes back to core values. Talk a little bit about core values for me, and kind of explain to the audience how that plays a major role in making sure you're building the proper culture.
Yeah. So some organizations do it really well and some do it terribly. And so what core values are not are just cute words or headlines on a piece of paper posted throughout the organization. What they're also not is, an owner sitting down, writing down what they think needs to be done, and then having a big team meeting and putting it on our t-shirts and saying, this is who we are moving forward. It just doesn't work. Because what generally happens is, if you're not living it through and through, the people see it, and it's like, okay, what cutesy thing is he trying to do now, or she trying to do now to get us to fall into alignment? That doesn't work. Being deeply rooted in them is going, especially when you're a smaller business. If you have shareholders and you're a Fortune 500 company, this probably looks a little bit different. But when you're a small business, you really have to lean into the reality that whatever this business is that you have is an extension of you. So what does that look like? Well, those values should be an extension of you in some capacity. So sitting with that and going, hey, what 3 to 5 things are really, really important that we do that'll be a North Star for this business for a long, long, long period of time, and will help attract the right people and keep myself in the container that I need to be in order to take care of this team and grow this organization. So they have to be very deeply rooted. And it's not just words, and it doesn't take 30 minutes or even 3 hours to do this. Like when we did this well, after a couple of iterations of doing it very poorly, there's an amazing book called The Core Values Equation by Darius Mirshahzadeh, and I won't even try to pronounce or spell his last name. It is very difficult. But he was voted one of the top 10 CEOs for a couple of years in a row in the United States. And I picked up his book and started reading it, and everything that he was doing when he was first trying to roll these out, as soon as he would say, and then I went and did this, I would go, yeah, me too. And then he would say, and it failed because of X, Y, Z. And I'm like, oh yeah, right. Me too. And when he explained the whole process on how to actually do this the correct way, I was like, man, that's going to take a lot of time. Holy cow. And a lot of deep introspective thinking. But we finally made the commitment to do it because we were sick of the byproducts that we were seeing consistently inside of our team. And then when we did it the right way, it really became the North Star of the organization in everything that we do. Like when it comes to how we serve our customers, I even share it with customers when we're doing strategy sessions. We lean into who we are and why that matters and why it's customer facing and how we make decisions internally for them as a business. And 90% of the time, it seems like I get laughs and acknowledgement from customers on the front end. We lean into it in the hiring process for what it looks like. We lean into it in leadership meetings when we're talking about decisions that we need to make. You guys lean into it consistently and don't even have to get me involved with decisions in large part now because you're like, well, what are these core values? What do they say we should do? And the reality is if you guys make decisions based off of that, and then I'm like, no, that wasn't the right thing to do, then am I really leaning into the core values of our organization, or are they just cute words?
Right. Yeah, I've even found myself, instead of coming to you with just, hey, we want to do this, like I'll come to you like, hey, like, so it's our core values, man. Like they don't align with this and that. And it's like you've almost programmed that into us. So kudos to you for that, because it again, like you said, it makes decisions so much easier, and leadership so much easier. So let me ask you this: you've seen a lot of businesses double their revenue without even changing marketing. It's just their leadership. I'd like you to share an example of what that looked like.
Yeah. So one of the biggest things that I've noticed throughout the years, whether it be something that I led or something I was just a part of, was that when there was really no like foundational infrastructure or whatever you want to call it for these core values and how the business leads and makes decisions and do what they do, much like I experienced and shared earlier on, it's very volatile. And it just feels very pushy and like you're leading from the back with a whip, trying to make people get to the next thing. When you can create some real intentional alignment in the organization, it makes it a lot easier for people to commit to whatever the goal is or goals are, and then follow through. And it creates a lot of synergy, like you find in really great sports teams. Some of the best sports teams of all times didn't have all-star lineups. They were deeply rooted in the mission and the goal, and they shared a collective of values for that team that made a ton of sense. And we've also seen in sports where this goes really, really wrong. You know, we have an organization that just goes out and they get nothing but all-star players and they still don't win the championship. There's a lot of ego involved there. There's not an alignment of values because, hey, we're all the best. Why do we have to listen to you anyway? We can make our own decisions as grown-ups. So from my experience inside of business, when you start with that as the foundation, when you've got great frameworks to how to go from A to B to C, so on and so forth, and people actually start seeing that come to fruition, you create momentum in the business that just marketing alone or a new software or whatever is not going to give you.
Yeah, makes sense. So what does intentional growth actually look like in real life versus just on a whiteboard?
Well, I mean, something that we do, we make sure when we're doing any type of growth planning, we're first identifying where we believe we want to go. So what is this thing that we're trying to accomplish? Then we go into part two of this, which is, what are the weaknesses and opportunities and degrees of importance moving into this next season of growth that we need to make sure that we're being very mindful of. So very kind of synonymous to a SWOT analysis. And then we start building out basically these projects that are in alignment with these goals, very similar to like the EOS system for anyone that's familiar with that. This is just a little bit more depth that we go through. But our goal with that is, as we've carved out these projects and then tasks and who's responsible for them, so on and so forth, when we're meeting consistently and going through this stuff, are we actually getting towards the North Star or not? And then it's very easy to see if our goals were too ambitious, if they were not, if we have, the wrong or right person involved in steering whatever this project is towards this goal. But that's generally what we've done.
Got it. So let me ask this. Why did you create Limitless Leaders, man? Like what, I mean, there's obviously a gap out here. What's the gap that you're really trying to fulfill or fill with that?
So the reason that we started BLG or Best Life Group in the first place was we were trying to remove hats from business owners. One of the things that we knew we could remove and do really well was marketing. We knew, though, at that time that in order for a business to truly grow or double within 12 to 24 months, it was going to expose leadership gaps and then just overall business development gaps inside of their operations and their systems and everything else. Where we had the greatest success was when we were doing both at the same time. We were driving the business in, and we were helping the business grow internally alongside the business owner. At a point in time in that, I basically way overcommitted myself to a whole bunch of one-on-one coaching. I way overcommitted myself to also buying another business and trying to grow that. And I basically was running out of time. And so I, with some respect, although it was smart and maybe a little selfish, pulled back and said, we're not doing this anymore. We're just going to focus on marketing as an agency to grow businesses. And that's our job. And so be it. The downside is when you're deeply committed to your core values. I had realized that although these relationships were presumably mutually beneficial, we were driving growth inside of their business. Businesses were also still leaving us. And not because we weren't doing a good job on the marketing end, it's because they didn't have a container or a network or coaching that was helping them elevate themselves as business owners. So they had this ego-driven idea that I want to increase this thing, by 100% or whatever it may be. That sounds nice. But they didn't have the fundamentals or the capacity and the foundation of how to get there. We were just driving more traffic, getting better conversions, and driving in more dollars. But if you can't control it very well at the stage that you're at, doubling it is going to be way more chaotic. So again, ego was driving that, but I saw consistently that if they didn't have somebody coming up alongside them to help, there was way too many gaps. And the other thing that I saw consistently is, who do you trust? They don't know who to ask and who to talk to. And so for us, with our background of how many times we've done this over and over for our own businesses and others, it just kept showing up over and over again this year that, hey, we have to help them on the leadership development side, the business development side, and personal development side for them to actually see the fruits of this for them as a business owner versus just creating more chaos.
So what do you feel like makes it different though? I know people, there's a lot of leadership programs and coaches and all this stuff out here, but what actually transforms people instead of just just this rah motivational stuff and then they're out of here?
Right. So I think the most important component of this is the fact that it is not one dimensional. Okay. So I have invested in lots of different coaching, and I invested in a leadership coach for our organization that worked with us for a year. That coaching was $36,000. A lot of small businesses don't have $36,000 to invest in just coaching, let alone everything else that they need to invest into. So I knew it wasn't attainable for a lot of businesses. And the other reality was, excuse me, leadership in and of itself, albeit important, is just one component. So if you're creating this better bench of people underneath you to support you as the business owner to continue to look outward and onward, you still have to have great business fundamentals and strategy underneath you. A lot of business owners don't. They were doing what I was doing, just work more. Tell the guys to do more stuff, throw a little bit more money at them, and we just hope it all works. They didn't know what pro formas were. They don't know how to do quarterly planning, in depth.
Right.
When the business doubles and now we need to hire more, they generally were doing very old school practices, and I hate to say this, but we'll just go on Craigslist. That's not where you're going to find the best talent for a lot of things. And then also, we've got this hiring platform, but oh my God, we got 100 applications over the weekend and I just don't have time to vet all this. We have systems for all of that. And that was just two components that I was like, well, we need these two things. But then I sat down with one of the coaches in this program and I said, can we just stop right here? We were at breakfast. I said, look, it doesn't matter how much I've invested in leadership and how much I've invested in business development coaching. If my heart and my soul and my mind are not in alignment, none of this shit matters. So we really need to start diving into some mindset and personal development coaching as well for people in this process. And that to me made a lot more sense because I was going through it personally. It wasn't until I invested in a world-class transformational coach that I was able to remove the lid, which was where we were at that time, and start getting to the next level. And then the not selfish, but the selfless side of me said, how do I give this back to other people to where it's affordable? Because not everyone has $3,000, $5,000, $10,000 a month to invest in coaching. I mean, one of the biggest limiters for us, again, being myself, was that I was not in a place where I could cultivate growth until I made the right investments. And although the investments seemed really big at the time, I'll never forget when we had our best sales month And then we had another one. And then in speaking with my own coach, he goes, don't think this is happenstance.
Hmm.
And, you know, our business in the last, I think it took 5 months for us to double just from this investment alone.
Hmm. That's wild, man. I mean, just it speaks to, it doesn't seem, it seems counterintuitive for most people, but we've talked about it recently, just that personal piece. You know, everyone wants, you want a business coach, you know what I mean? You want someone that can help you get to the next level. But like you said, if you're not personally ready to get to that place, like you're going to be capped, you're going to have a ceiling. So it's like that idea of kind of transformation from the inside out. Again, it sounds great, but
Right.
talk about a little bit about your journey through that, like, and what that's looked like over the last year.
Yeah, I mean, so the high level version is very simple. I had done a lot of the groundwork for it, but I noticed that my response to growth consistently was not that of encouragement, excitement, and ready to continue to go to the next level. It was a fear-based response.
Mm.
Oh fuck, now I have more stress because we have more payroll, and oh my god, if we make this decision and this investment and this doesn't work out, then what? And I just can basically was just running in a trauma loop all the time. I want to get to the next level because of ego, but if we get to the next level, it's going to be very challenging. And I was basically talking myself out of it consistently. And it wasn't until we had some team members going, hey, I love it here, but if we're talking about our core values and mutually beneficial relationships, it's not mutually beneficial for me to be here for 3 years and be in the same role. I've got to grow too. And I went, oh, fuck. All right, now I got to get out of my own way and I've got to actually start doing these things for them. And it wasn't until I had regulated my nervous system, understood a lot of this traumatic shit that happened in my life that, like most of us men do, we just push it down in the basement and lock it away. And what they don't tell us is that's where it goes to work out. Mm-hmm. And when it comes back, it's 10 times worse than it was before. And so it wasn't until in those moments that I said, I've got to make this investment in myself for my team and for the viability of the business. And again, it was scary. But, back to your previous question, because I think this is important too. You said, what is different about this program? It's not just showing people a bunch of stuff on how to do the things. There's actual integration time 3 times a month. We're going to talk about something that's super important that you need for a fact. The next time we're going to talk about the actual integration and application of that in your business and what's showing up. And then based off of where you need the most help, you also have access to have one-on-one coaching with one of the coaches in the group to talk about things that maybe you don't want to share in a public forum with other people, but to get deeper on the challenges that are ahead of you and actually see a result.
Yeah. What's one truth from the program that's going to make people, let's say, a little uncomfortable, but they might need to hear this anyway?
We're going to hold you accountable. It's not my personal style to have a conversation with somebody that I am paying for them to help me, and they don't punch me in the face sometimes. I mean, I had it last week with a coach of mine. I gave him all this shit that wasn't going super well, and his response to me initially was good. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. And he's like, well, what do you think? You're going to go through this transformative process and then all of a sudden life is perfect? No. So same thing here. There's going to be a high level of accountability. Like, you don't invest in something like this, marketing or a program like this, and it's just all sunshine and rainbows. We're still going to have setbacks, but at least you're going to have people in your corner that can help you through that.
Awesome. Well, now it's time for my favorite part of the show. I'm going to ask you some rapid fire questions before we close. Are you ready, Dustin?
I hope so.
All right. 5 questions. First thing that comes to mind. 1 word to describe leadership today.
Soft.
Biggest misconception about being a CEO.
It doesn't have to be lonely at the top.
1 trait every great leader needs.
Everyone says great communication, and yeah, that's a part of it. But really, it is a good foundation of hearing and understanding your team.
Okay. Hardest part about leading people.
They're people. They're all unique, just like kids.
Absolutely. And leadership in 1 sentence. Go.
It really is a dichotomy of leading from the front and back.
Yeah. So, guys, leadership isn't about titles. It's about truth. And if this talk today hit a nerve, then that's probably a sign that you might be ready for the next level. You can keep blaming your ads, your team, your company, or the economy. But you can also take a hard look at the person in the mirror and start leading from the front and inspiring from the back, as you just said, Dustin. So I'd love for you guys to join us inside Limitless Leaders, where we're going to build better leaders, better people, not just better businesses. The business should serve you, and it can only do that when you are your best self.
If you want more information, you can do all that stuff or go to limitless.lifebythehorns.com. That's life with a Y. But everything you need to know about the program, what to expect, what the cost is to enroll in this, all that information is right there.
Guys, until next time, grab life by the horns. Peace.